Like we've seen kids are creating chatbots and they've been instructed how to kill themselves.
This week on the Shameless Podcast.
Peter, what do you think? Like, it's amazing. I felt like I'm with all these CEO leaders of the world. And Peter, he turns to me, he goes, do you think what we're doing here and what you're doing is creating better community in the world? You're only as good as your weakest person in the company. The biggest thing that kills entrepreneurs is doubt. I have doubt. I wake up every day with doubt. Think of God. Would God talk to you in a way of like, you're not going to make it? We have a cow in the ditch. So what the answer is, what do you do when there's a cow in the ditch?
Whoa, hold on. You're telling me that it's never a plan? There's just, but that's shocking.
I wake up and I got to do the work. I have work I got to do today. I'm just going to do the work. I can't worry about tomorrow. I got to do the work.
The episode today is community is much more than belonging to something. It's about doing something together that makes belonging matter. Sometimes we are afraid to do something. You fear shame. I don't want shame. We're trying to break that burden by sharing stories of courage, resilience, and we want to be able to celebrate your story.
Shameless.
Welcome, Shameless family. My name is Dzikamai Gangaidzo, and I'm a mining engineer first and foremost, but I'm also the host of the Shameless Podcast. And today, I'm ever so excited to talk to Rob, who's the founder of KidCoAI.ai, as well as running another business at the same time. It's very seldom that you meet people who have two ideas at the same time and then decide to be founders of two businesses concurrently. And the other business is called UR.AR?
AI.
AI. UR.AI. And congratulations for your recent funding round that you just got over the line. So congratulations for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And welcome to the Shameless Podcast.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
You know, the beauty of sort of us discussing what you do, and I am going to ask you to sort of introduce yourself, is that for anybody who's really looking to be an entrepreneur or who is curious about how to execute on certain projects and deliver value, especially within the AI space. Rob, you sound and seem like an individual who's worn all the hats that are possible to wear, number one. But secondly, you've sort of rewound your clock and you are revisiting sort of an earlier form of your youth, really, in setting up KidCo.ai. And I really am excited to jump into this conversation and really tackle the idea of executing to deliver value. So without any further ado, Rob, I would not be able to do service in introducing you to our audience. So I'd rather let you introduce yourself.
Thank you. I've been in the technology industry for about 30 years, but my sort of claim to fame is I invented when you chat on a website in 1997, I invented that technology. So you go to a website, you see a little chat box and you chat on it for customer care. I invented the technology and I ended up creating this company called LivePerson. And LivePerson became the leading company for conversational AI. I turned into an AI company and I ran it for 28 years. I went public. I took it public in 2000 and ran it as a public company for 22 years. So I started the company in 1995, slept on a couch, ended up getting it public. I was literally slept on a couch for 3 years and ate like ramen noodles. I was broke.
Wow.
And then I had that experience and then took it public and grew it to a little over 3,000 employees, about 550 million in revenues. It was a multi-billion market cap company. And then I left in 2023 to pursue building what I built today. And I actually moved to Silicon Valley. I lived in New York and I moved to Silicon Valley. And then I started Kid Company, which is a AI device and experience for children. And I created a company called URAI, which is about small models for individual AI, because I have kind of a different vision of AI than I think most people are doing. And I figured I wanted to get back to my startup roots and build companies from the ground up versus running a big company with the bureaucracy and all the stuff that makes it not so much fun.
So I'm gonna. You said a lot of things. First and foremost, is you invented the technology of a chatbot in 1990.
What? 7. I invented chat, yeah, which has now become the most used interface of like it became an AI interface. Web
Yes.
chat, it's our web. So it became something even more than I thought it would be. But yeah, I invented that. It didn't exist. Like I was building e-commerce websites, and then there was no way to communicate with people except to call them and send emails. And I thought of why not chat? So
Wow. So in your mind, when you invented that, it was just like, well, if you don't want to call or email, like, what's a more direct and more faster way of sort of getting that conversation moving? That's what I
that was it.
understand.
We saw that a lot of people would come to a website and leave. And the people on websites could see all this, like there was like 90% of the people, if not more, would just hit and go, and I was like, well, why don't you talk to them? These are humans. And there was a perspective at that time that the internet was like a vending machine, and you put products up on a website and people put their credit card in, you never have to talk to them. But the reality is we're human beings and we want to be communicated with. We build trust through connection. And I wanted to bring that connection, that human connection onto the website, put the salesperson on the website. And that's really where I got started in the industry.
So then now, when you say trust through connection, I would like to then really strongly pivot to Kid Company and really, when you're building AI tools for children or centered around children,
Yes.
trust is non-negotiable really in a space like that. And how have you approached AI and children, data governance, data, everything associated to a child's well-being? Because those are sort of the most vulnerable entities within our society. How then do you get that trust? I mean, because I struggle to believe that is even possible for me to be able to trust the kid and an AI model.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, I have 3 young children, 9, 7, and 4. And when you have young children and you see what's happening today with our kids and devices, it's hard. It's a horrific experience. And as much as I love my phone, when I hand it to my children, I feel like I've lost. And most parents who have young children, this generation is a very different generation, even than the teenagers. Something happened during COVID that like YouTube and YouTube Kids, they decided consumption was really the most important thing. And they let this model happen and children become addicts. Like what happened, it was a couple of years ago, this is when I was leaving LivePerson, like my middle child, I remember it's 3:00 in the morning. I hear something. I woke up to go to the bathroom. I'm like, there's TV's on. I mean, I hear not TV, I hear like a noise. I go downstairs and there's at that time he was 4 years old, scrolling on an iPad, watching YouTube Kids, like a drug addict. And he stole the iPad out of he stole it because we kept it in our room. He took it, snuck down at 3:00 in the morning. I go, what are you doing? And he doesn't even know what he's doing. And then my younger one, who's 4 now, this one's 7, he says the F word one day because he saw it on YouTube and YouTube Kids because they think it's fine. They bring violence with characters. They have, it's like funny to throw a baseball at some kid's head and you laugh about it because it's like a baseball that's soft. But children don't. So what I started to see is that the value system of these influencers are influencing my children. And what I said is, enough is enough. I would like to create a device that can bring the power of technology and especially AI into the hands of children, but I'm going to do it in a safe way because these are my children. And so I had to think through, you're right, how do you bring AI and how do you create models that are purposeful for a 4-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old? And that's really what I set out to do with the Kid Company.
And so when you then have that as the core of why you're doing it and what you're doing, how different is it from, let's say, an OpenAI, right? And I don't want to use say an OpenAI because I'm not targeting them, but
no, I get it.
A large language model. And that has the initial goal of maximizing consumption over delivering a very specific objective. What sets you guys apart?
Because we trained the models and we created it just for 4 to 12-year-olds. So what happens is they created a consumption model for everybody because they want to make billions of dollars, and they started with that idea. And then what happened was children started to get access to that technology. Like we've seen kids are creating chatbots and they've been instructed how to kill themselves because these big models were made for everybody based on the world's knowledge. We use models. We created models, and we created a platform that's only for 4 to 12-year-olds. It's just not made for everybody. So it was purposely built from the beginning that when you talk to a character, it talks to you as though you're a 6-year-old or a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old. It can't instruct you to do any harm. It won't help. It won't do anything. So this, if you set out in the world, and there's a thing called COPA. There's a thing called COPA, which is the highest standard of technology, digital engagement with children. And we're in the middle of getting certified, and we will be certified.
Middle or the end?
We're at the end. Yeah, because we're literally like days away. So, but what was interesting is a company called Prevo that certifies you on FTC certification. We started with them on day one. We started building the platform with Prevo as a consulting firm that certifies you from day one. So I didn't come in at the end and say, look, we made this thing. We said, what do we need to do? Build everything from the ground up so we can get the certification. And they said, you have to do this, this, and this. Okay, great. And they watched us all the way through. So if you start with the intention of no harm, if you start with the intention of not consuming, but creativity, that the device will have children create, you just create something much different. We don't have scrolling. So here's the device. You can talk to characters and there's creative areas, but you can't scroll.
Yeah.
There's no scroll here. There's no third-party content coming in that you don't have control over. Matter of fact, there is no third-party content. You as a parent create the content, kids create the content. But it's a shift in mentality. It's a shift in mentality of what devices normally are made for, which is distraction and disconnection between their family.
And so I'd like to sort of rewind, right, to your previous experiences. And the reason why I want to rewind is because I really want to understand how you ended up getting here. Because, I mean, it's a very benevolent, it's a very noble sort of cause of the space. Were you always like this? And as you sort of started your first business, were you chasing maybe slightly different things, or were you always curious towards building? And the reason why I ask that is you execute and look to add or deliver value. And a lot of the time, what motivates an individual then ends up showing itself in the products that they deliver. And I'm very curious as to whether you've changed over time, or whether this has always been how you viewed it.
So at LivePerson, it was a B2B company. We're selling big corporations this software to chat and message and do, AI. And I had a board member called Peter Block, and he wrote this amazing body of work around community and connection. He's world renowned for this, an amazing gentleman. And I brought him on the board, it was like 10 years into the company, because I was very interested in our culture and creating a certain type of culture of connection. And he was the foremost on this idea. And so I brought him in, and we started to work on the company and how to bring connection and community into the company. Interesting enough, I was at a conference with him. Peter Thiel, if you know Peter Thiel, the big venture capitalist, used to have a conference, and he would invite CEOs and, people. And I went one year, and I felt really proud. I was selected to go. And next year, I brought Peter with me. I asked him, could I bring Peter Block? They said, sure. So I remember this changed my whole life. I remember the whole conference was, you go to small groups, and at the end of the day, like, Peter and I met up. So he went to his own small group stuff, and the different topics, and people would run it. Well, in the end, we're at the cocktail party, and I'm with Peter. I go, Peter, what do you think? Like, it's amazing. I felt like I'm with all these CEO leaders of the world, and Peter, he's like a Buddha kind of. He turns to me, he goes, I never met a group of people who are so sure about what they're doing is going to create something impactful in the world. The second thing he said to me, and he turns to me and says, I'm going to ask you a question. Do you think what we're doing here and what you're doing is creating better community in the world? Because in the end, if you look at the human, what we do as humans and what we're leaving in the world and what we're creating in the world, it's got to be about creating better community. Like, whether you have a company, your family, whatever it is, that's the highest standard. It's bringing people together, moving us together. And I looked him in, and I couldn't answer the question. And by the way, I left the conference. I'm like, I'm never going back to that conference again. Because I knew this is all bullshit. It was bullshit. Like, we weren't, as a company, able to answer the question. So when I left LivePerson, one of the things I have the opportunity to do was create companies that I think could answer the question. I know this device is about bringing back, I'll call the bond. Like I sit with my children and I'll make a story with them together. Like it's technology that this is not, I hand them the device and go get out of my hair and
Get out of here.
and this is a device where you are making things with your children and we've lost that bond, So I want to be able to answer the question. Maybe it's a privilege, like, because when I was running LivePerson, I was just in the middle of a lot of things and, but I want to be able to definitively ask a question: is what I'm doing building better community and connection? And that's what I set out to do.
And so when you then LivePerson, you were in the wheel, right? Like you were
Every
really
90 days, making quarterly calls. You're in the wheel.
in the wheel, right? So then my curiosity is around you starting that company and versus your current experience of you starting this company. What would you say are some of the most interesting things that you've learned in starting a company? I mean, because you've done it multiple times, but it's like literally, surely you get better with it over time? Or is it like, it's brand new every single time?
No, I mean, like the one thing that you get over experience is that I have a filter. I have a filter of scale. Like I saw scale. So when I look at problem solving and I put the filter on it, I can say, can this thing we're doing help scale the business? The second part is people, where it's very interesting. I have like a 2-week rule here. If the team doesn't like you in 2 weeks, or you don't like the team, then you've got to leave. In LivePerson, we could keep people around for a year, because there's all this thing you do when you're a larger company. You give people more try, because when you have 3,000 people, potentially one person doesn't have as much impact, but one person in a 20-person team has a tremendous impact.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I've learned over my entire life, there's two main things I've learned about running companies and startups. And the two most important things, I think, is one is, I'm going to say something very obvious, which is you're only as good as your weakest person in the company. And that's even a large company. And we tend to give people too many trials and we give them too many chances. That's number one. Number two is your job as a leader is to manage the energy of a company. Energy either flows or it doesn't flow. And when it flows, it just flows. And you don't have to manage much more than that. So you got great people, you got energy that's flowing, like the ideas, and people are not getting in the way of the ideas, just supporting each other. And the third one is the belief in God. Like without believing in God, whatever God you want to believe in, it's really hard to build businesses. If I don't have a greater sense of my connection to something better and bigger than me, I call there's a CEO above you. If you really want to think about it, I've seen this my whole life. There is something above you that is managing you. And you may not want to admit it, but there's something out there that is instructing you to go about your business. And sometimes you want to not listen to it. Sometimes you don't want to believe in it. It's called gut and intuition, but it is a signal from the universe that you are on a path of the right path or the wrong path. And without a belief in God, you have a lot of doubt. The biggest thing that kills entrepreneurs is doubt. I have doubt. I wake up every day with doubt.
So then,
I'm like, oh my God, this sucks today. I wake up, even after all I've done, I'm like, oh my God, I'm not going to make it, And that's just being an entrepreneur. You're like, because you're dealing with the uncertainty of everything,
but then, so then, fair enough. Doubt is always going to be there. But then, I guess probably the most important thing is how you end up coping with doubt or in doubt. How do you end up still being able to make decisions despite the amount of uncertainty, despite the speed of change and the rest of it, right? So my question to you is, what insights, what gates have you put in place to assist you in being able to manage undoubtedly the doubts that you have, even though you've done it all, right? What gates would you say you've put in order to be able to help manage that?
There's this concept of like called discernment. And if we think about what that means, that we all have a voice in our head and it's talking to us all day. And most of the time as an entrepreneur, that voice is providing a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. I don't know if this is going to happen. This could probably fail. I don't know if I'm going to raise the money. I don't know if I'm going to sell, because all of that is potential truth and potentially not. So what you find is if you can separate the discernment between that voice and the voice of God, think of God as a best friend. Think of God. Would God talk to you in a way of like, you're not going to make it? Would God, and by the way, I know the last in May, I took a trip in Spain and did a walk of St. Ignatius Loyola. By the way, I'm not like a big church goer or anything like that. So this isn't what this is about, but I went to Loyola University. I did this walk of this saint who over this time period, he took this walk for 28 days and he transformed into what he became, which is St. Ignatius Loyola. And I went through this process there and it had a very profound effect on me because I felt somewhere starting new companies that I needed to get closer to God and that I need to have more of a direct conversation with God. And I can't tell you why. And I did have some profound experiences as I did this walk. But with that said, in the end, when I came back, I've continued on this. He wrote this thing called the spiritual exercises, and it's like a meditation. You meditate on scripture and stuff, which I've never done. But what it taught me was like, when I'm feeling that sense of uncertainty, and sometimes it's very, very strong, especially in the morning on a Monday. Yeah, because it's not about the money. It's the money. It's about your reputation. It's about your ability to succeed. People rely on me. I've got shareholders. I got these venture guys. One of my venture guys in this company was my original one in LivePerson. He was my first investor in LivePerson, and he came back. I feel a sense of responsibility for all these people, but in the end, that puts a lot of weight on your back. In the end, I have to be able to say, like, would God say, if you have a conversation with God, would God say like, oh my God, I'm not going to make it? It's so weird. No. So that little talk track you have, it's not real. It's not God. It's not the universe telling you you're a failure. It's not the universe telling you you can't make it. It's not the universe telling you you're just not good enough. The universe doesn't talk like that. The universe is like, I put you here to do something good. I here to put something big. I want you to go in the world and make something of yourself. And no matter how hard it is, keep going. And then what you start to do is you have to discipline yourself and say, stop it, because God would never talk to me like that. God doesn't talk in that tiny little voice. You understand? So once again, whatever you think God is, I'm not saying it's a God with St. Ignatius Loyola and a Catholic church. It's whatever you think it is, that you have to discern between the voice of God, the voice of that thing that's above, and it's kind of all powerful, and there's you, the little person with your little reptile brain trying to think you ain't gonna make it. So if you can make the discernment, I think you can have I'm much more at peace now, because starting two companies, like it's a lot. I got a family. Yeah. It's a lot. I also have a family now. I've got a family. When I was young, I was sleeping on a couch, and even if nothing worked out, it was just me. I didn't care. Yeah. Now I got kids, and I got a wife, and I got a responsibility there. I don't want my children to think I didn't make it. And there's a whole other psychological thing when you have family. So you got to somewhere you got to be able to say like, okay, I'm on a path for a reason.
Yeah. And so then when you're on that path, whether it was before or even currently, some of those obstacles that sort of then get in your way that really either amplify the doubt or really do a number on you. Would you say those are many? Do you have any examples of sort of those obstacles that hit you? And we talked about the wall, either you scale it or you hit it. And then how have you then overcome some of those real big challenging obstacles for you to be able to still put yourself up and proceed?
I think there would be like three levels of obstacles. One is, I'll call it the macro. Like I went through 9/11 in New York City, and before 9/11, we terminated like 90% of the company to stay alive. It was during the .com. I survived the .com, but it was a very painful experience. And then we experienced 9/11, like literally from our offices, we watched the towers come down. And there were only like 30 of us there at the time because we let a lot of people go a few months before. It's scary. So like, it's a macro event and nobody can teach you anything about it. And everyone in the world is experiencing it at the same time. The financial crisis, everyone was experiencing that at the same time. COVID, everyone's experiencing that at the same time. So in those situations, what I found through my first experience with 9/11 was you got to pace differently. You have to slow everything down. You have to slow down. and you have to let the macro event play itself in front of you. And you have to be slightly behind it and not try to guess go. In the case of like, even when COVID hit, I remember everyone was like, oh my God, revenues are going to go down, everything, because no one's working. And I was like, I remember I had meetings with the full company. I was at my home and I'd be online, and it was just like, slow it down, just slow it down and see where it played out, where, a couple of weeks later, our volume went up by 40% on our servers because the contact centers got shut down and they needed AI. And we grew faster than we ever did. But at the point, I remember, so what I learned was, in macro situations, you can't control them. You got to let them play, but don't play in front of them, play way behind them. Let them play out, and then you respond as they're moving forward. So those are one. Then there's the operational events that are happening at a company, because you're operating a business, you're executing on a plan. And those are a little bit more, interesting, because there are numerous amount of factors that can go into when you're feeling there's a challenge inside the business. It's hard for me to talk through. Like, some mean that you need to pivot and move somewhere else. Some maybe you have an operational issue, but my strategy there is what I call cow in the ditch. Okay.
Cow in the ditch.
And anyone who worked with me has heard this, and you've heard this, which is, I'll sit my team down and go, we have a cow in the ditch. And there's this, if you can imagine, there's a cow, there was a story about, there was a cow in a ditch, and there's like 3 people around the cow. One person is pointing at the cow and going, I can't fucking believe you, excuse my language, you fell in the ditch. You're so ridiculous. Cow, you're the worst cow in the world. Another person's analyzing, I wonder how the cow got in the ditch. Now, the cow probably walked 10 feet, and the cow, the cow did that. And then there's the third person who's just freaking out. Oh my God, the cow's in the ditch. Oh my God, I can't believe it. Cow's in the ditch. We're not going to be, I don't know when I can be. Okay. So what the answer is, what do you do when there's a cow in the ditch? What do you think you do? Which one of these things do you do? Like, what do you do when there's a cow in the ditch?
Well, I personally look at all 3 and I'm like, you shouldn't do any of those 3. You should look to get the cow out the ditch, I guess.
Okay. You are very smart. Okay. So funny enough, because if you're sitting around the table of people, you'll see each personality shows up and no one's doing anything, but they're watching a cow die. So in the operation, everyone's criticizing. Some people are freaking out. Some people are analyzing. And the number one thing you got to do is get the cow out of the ditch. Once you get the cow out of the ditch, you can analyze it, you can criticize it, you can freak out about it. But if the cow doesn't get out of the ditch, the cow's going to die. So the first thing I'm like, identify what it is. Did you lose a customer? Did you have a problem? Whatever it is, get the cow out of the ditch. And then you can spend all your energy. Right. So that's just.
I love that. I absolutely love that. That's
and then
the second one. The third?
The third one is the most interesting one, which is, there are people who are going to want you to fail.
Wow.
And there are people in your life who do not want you to succeed, for a series of reasons. One could be because they know if you succeed, and I saw that if you're growing a company and you're moving forward and they realize they don't have it in them to move forward, their goal would be to move you back. Their goal would be, and I learned when I was a young CEO, I brought in mature people to run the business, which was the right thing to do, who had a lot more experience than I did, because I was in my 20s. I was in my early 30s when I went public. So I brought in these people, and a lot of times they would say things to me to undermine, and they knew I was young enough to not really stand my ground. So they would undermine slowly my feeling that I knew what I was going to do. And they're not consultative to you, trying to help you be a better CEO or being a better leader. They're trying to basically undermine your ability to run, making you think you're not the person for it. And there were a few times in LivePerson people try to take my job, and they were just flat out were doing, and and I was like, instead of helping me build a business, because I didn't have all the answers, instead they thought, I'm going to take this guy's job. And it's like, and I always feel like the best thing you can do is help people be better. Like, one of our number one core value at the company is be your best self. When you're here, but in order for me to be my best self, I need you to help me, and I'll help you. Like, if you're helping me be my best self and I help you, it's not just me on my own, but a lot of times what you find, and those are the weirdest ones, because you almost have to put up fight. And it's like, I call it, like, in my mind, when that happens, you have to then put up a wall and realize what you're going through, and that you're going to probably have to exit that person over some time frame, because they're going to try to take a piece of you.
Yeah.
And I just saw this. So I think there's these 3 levels of dealing with the wall. They're
Mm.
all walls, the operational
Wow.
wall, the personal wall, and the macro wall. And each one has a different way to deal with them.
Wow. And so, that is so fascinating. And I love the analogies and the sort of the framing that you have for it. And so when now you're always going to have some version of a wall in front of you, I assume. But in order for you to wake up one day and say, I'm going to run two businesses, there's the element of a vision, shaping the vision, communicating the vision. And then there's the other part of it of translating the vision into reality. I'm incredibly curious because, obviously, LivePerson there was a vision, you executed, you realized some reality of it. And then when you got to the end of it, then you said, you know what, I'm out. This is perfect. And so now you're doing it again. And I always believe that there's reflection and introspection that is natural when you are repeating a process like this. And so I'm very curious as to understand, number one, what have you done? What do you do? How do you do that? But even more so is, what have you reflected upon and then appreciated more the second time
So
out?
look, I have it's not an ego, but like I have a gift to take a vision, which is usually given to you. Like visions, if you ever talk to musicians, I've got some like well-known musician friends who are great musicians, and you ask them like, where's the song come from? And they'll give you the same answer as what an entrepreneur would probably give you. Where's an idea come from? An idea comes from the ether. It's out here. And
Yeah.
you caught it. Now you may caught it because like I had a personal experience with my kids and I'm like, wow, I want to solve the personal experience. I have a belief about personal AIs through, that came through. I was like thinking about my dad passed away like 10, 11 years ago. I'm like, why couldn't have I made him an AI and my kids could talk to him? Like that was that simple concept. Then it's like a little seed is put into your head and then you make it into something broader and bigger. Then you articulate it to a group of people. Then people are attracted to what you're doing. And then you're organizing them through what I call a map. The operational thing is a map, massive action plan. So you've got a plan, an organized plan to deliver on the vision with the right people. And that's pretty much the goal. But I do think it's a gift, part of the role of an entrepreneur and is the gift of translating a vision into actionable results. Because a vision without actionable results is what we call a dream, and
Yeah.
that's what we do at night when our eyes are closed. But once you wake the field of play, you got to organize a bunch of people to all move in unison towards the same goal. And that's that takes, that's a trick. It's a trick to do that. I don't know if it's a trick, but it's a art and science to make.
Yeah. And
But
so,
I
good.
think you're saying like I think you were saying lessons learned or or
Yes.
reflections. I mean, the biggest one for me when I left LivePerson was, I mean, it was interesting. I left LivePerson in like, we had an activist shareholder and it wasn't like I retired. It was a very different world than I expected at the end. And then the company has lost like 90% of its value and
Wow.
it's left. And it's not, it doesn't matter anymore to me. What matters was that when I did leave, I had to find an answer to what my future would be. And it was kind of like a Steve Jobs leaving moment. Like it wasn't the way I expected. It was unnatural. It wasn't my plan. But with that said, it opened up a world for me. And I had a choice. Do I like get sad or angry or there's a lot of stuff going on? Or do I like say, look, I've got free time and that free time has been given to me to potentially do. And here I picked up my family. I kept coming to California. I never lived here in Silicon Valley. I flew out a couple of times and then we had an office here at one time. So I spent a lot of time here being in tech, but I never lived here. And I talked to my wife and I said, look, there's nothing for me in New York anymore. Like I want to build an AI company and this is the place it's going to be and let's go. So we packed up our family of three kids and we, came out to the West Coast and found a place to live. And I started building these companies and that was only a year ago. And
Wow.
in 1 year, we've got, I'm selling this device for Christmas and kid, and I just raised 10.3 million for the other one and we're on our way. And so when you think about it's like, you always have to kind of keep moving forward. And I didn't had a hard exit. And I had actually a couple of my other friends had activists too at the same time, and they had a hard exits. And we've talked about it. And I think at that point, you just have a decision to make. So it's never easy. It's like And it never is a plan. You don't have the plan. You have nothing.
Wait, hold on. Whoa, hold on. You're telling me that it's never a plan? There's just but that's shocking.
There is no, yeah. If you realize you've been around long enough that you may not have the plan. The plan just may not be. You may think you have a plan because you're a human being. You may feel like you have the control of everything because you're a human being. You're put in a role of leadership. But when you think about the broader plan, the big plan, like, why did I end up in California? Why did I think of these companies? How did these people show up? How am I even selling
Fair
this?
enough.
Why am I on your podcast about this? None of this. Yes, if you were going to go back even 4 years ago and you were talking to me at LivePerson, you say, look, you're going to leave LivePerson. You're going to move to California. You're going to start these two companies. You're going to do a device company for kids. And you're going to do this. I'd be like, what are you smoking?
Nah.
What company? I'm on. So in the end, like, what part do you have in the plan is part of life. Like, I think we're all trying to figure out what's our part in the big plan, and we don't have the answers. I don't have the answers to that. I don't wing life. I'm not a winging of life. I mean, I definitely manage my life. I'm a responsible adult. Yeah, I'm like not.
But I guess the essence of it is as much as you might plan and you might try to orchestrate and do things as deliberately as possible. And I think Steve Jobs said it best in the commencement speech, is that sometimes you can only join the dots looking backwards, right? And you follow a level of curiosity, you follow a level of the journey that you're on, and then in the end you find yourself in a space that I'm here now, and you're selling all these too. Now, I'm also very curious.
He's right.
Yeah?
I mean, that's if you're, and I would say this also to people who have really put themselves out there. Like, the more you put yourself out on that edge into the uncertainty of life, the more you'll find that the only way you'll make sense is by connecting the dots, because you can't make sense of it when you're in the middle of it. Like, I'm not making sense of a lot of things about LivePerson and where I am today and where I'm going. Like, it doesn't matter, by the way. Truly can't. It's like this, going back to this belief in God and having a more closer relationship with God. If you can get there, and I'm like a work in progress. But the one thing I say is, like, if you can truly live in this moment, like, and I've heard that my whole life and I never understood it. But if you can truly live in the moment, and I think the only way you can do there is by believing in something, then you're not thinking about all the past and future. As a matter of fact, all I think is, like, I'm going to say, I got to do the work. I've been given, to do the work. Like, talking about what's happening next week, or we may make it, or we may not, or this device may sell, millions of devices, or may sell, now it's not zero. We have hundreds of people that bought it now. But, like, all of that, you're better off just living. I wake up and I got to do the work. I have work I got to do today. I'm just going to do the work. I can't worry about tomorrow. I got to do the work, because if I don't do the work today, there is no tomorrow. And if I worry about tomorrow, I'm definitely not going to do the work today. I'm going to spend too much time worry about. It's like, I'm just saying, well, the plan, the path changes. You have some hand in it, but there's a hand there that may be just helping you along because you don't have it in you. I really think a lot of us, I don't think humans, like, have it in us. I don't think I think when we're faced with things, we then step up to have it in us. But I think there's something there challenging us, pushing us, guiding us. And I can't explain what it is. I'm trying to understand it myself.
That's very interesting. Very, very fascinating. And so in a very as concise as possible, I am super interested. And you talk about plans, and sometimes the plans and the ideas and the vision might not be what you initially thought it would be, and to what it ended up being. And I'm talking about sort of I'll call it a Black Mirror episode, which is where your initial idea was with a sort of a Michael Bomber cancer patient. Please explain all of that so that we can really understand that Black Mirror is real. I mean,
Yeah, I when I started the company, URAI, which was called Eternos when I started a little over a year ago, the first customer is a guy I worked with at LivePerson. I hadn't talked to him for a few years, but he posted on Facebook he's dying of cancer and he's got a couple of months to live. I called him up because I had already been working on the platform about replicating a human being. And I was like that, because I felt that was the highest form of AI, is like replicating a human, not making a chat bot for customer care. So I called him up and said, Michael, I've been working on this thing and I'd love to show it to you. And he goes, oh, I've been thinking about this. I was wondering if I can make myself an AI before I die. I said, well, let's give it a shot because I'm like 70% there on the platform. So he recorded his voice, and then he recorded about 25 hours of his life stories.
Wow.
And we put it together on our platform and made these models. I flew to Germany because that's where he lived. And I show up at his house with his wife, and I open my laptop and I said, Michael, talk to Michael. And I open so he starts talking to his AI. And at first he starts asking questions like, what was my favorite this and my favorite vacation? Where did I grow up? And who was my mom and dad? And it's getting all the facts perfect. So then he goes, I'm going to ask you a kind of an interesting question. So what is he goes? So he says, I'm going to make like I'm a great grandson. So he says, I'm your great grandson and you don't know me, but I'm having this issue at work. And what would you do? He asked a question that he knew his data set didn't have an experience with that specific problem. And the AI came back and answered it the way he was thinking he was going to answer the.
Wow.
He goes, oh my God, I can't believe this thing's answering, because we found in your life stories, there's some specific life stories that tell us how you make decisions and how you reason. And we applied that. So that wasn't the really emotional part. That was more the technical, interesting part. He says, you know what? I'm calling my wife Annette in. So he calls Annette, he goes, let her see what does she think? So he calls Annette in, and Annette starts to talk to his AI. And then she asks his AI, how did you feel the first time we met? And his AI in this very loving voice says, when I saw you for the first time, I fell in love with you. And we all
Just wow.
we got really emotional, all of us. And I remember I was on the edge of tears. And I remember his wife, Annette, now she's faced with this, that her husband's going to die shortly. And yet she's got this AI. And I walked out of that, we spent another hour with him, and I ended up leaving, and I was with somebody else from the company. I said, Mel, I've never had an experience with technology where we had the human emotion present, where we had humanity there. I said, we have something here. It's a question of how do we get this out to everybody? And that led me on, well, where can we, this technology, what can we do with it? And as we put it into the world, doctors showed up, lawyers showed up, writers showed up. Actually, nobody who's dying showed up. Most people are living. I want to use this AI for my daily life, and I want to share myself with others, but I want to have a very high quality AI. So that's what happened there. And it was just really profound on as a technology person. Like, I've never had someone cry, looking at our tech. So
wow. And that's, and to think that's 1 year through sort of this journey now, and
it's a year in, yeah.
the idea of how that can grow further, what opportunities and potential that has, because at the end of it all, we living in a space where we are connected, and that level of emotion, that ability to connect, the ability to learn is just something that I guess is the value that you're putting forward.
Well, it turns out I've been chasing for since probably 2016, almost 10 years. I've been chasing the interface for AI. I wanted to make a better Alexa when I was at LivePerson, or Siri, or the movie Her. So the movie
Yeah.
Her. It turns out you are the best AI. That's
You
why we
are.
named it. You are the interface. Talking to yourself. Talking to yourself, having the knowledge of it answers all the questions, because your AI wouldn't take your job. Your AI
See, but
wouldn't.
hold on. But at the same time, how do I? And I'm sorry for being this critic, because how do I trust you? How do I trust that is not just going to turn out to be you, Rob? Or it's because
You control it. It's all about the data set. It's like, even this device, it's all about the data set. Like, whoever controls the data set and uses your data set controls you. In your AI, you have your data set, you own your data set. It's your data set. It's not ours. It's yours. We don't use it to train other models. We're not using it to learn. You get to use that as a model.
and your visibility into the data set.
We don't look into it. Like, it's yours. You can delete it. You can take it with you. You own it. We don't use it. We don't need it. Like, it's not part of our business model. Our business model is, you're on our platform, you're creating an AI, you're sharing with others. We get paid when you share and monetize, and there's a marketplace for your AI. Like, I don't really care about your AI. Like, I'm not in your data set trying to figure out how to make my AI better than yours. Like, I don't want to. There's no business in that. Like, that's already, those companies already exist, like OpenAI. I don't, and Google. I don't want to be in that business. I want to be a business like, hey, you can have your own AI or you can use those big AIs, but you can have your own AI. And especially for writers, we find writers and creators need a place to store their knowledge that's not going to be stolen and used, and that they control and they can monetize it and share it. Like writers are so much amazing people, and they're being left. That's our value proposition. So we don't.
And this is so befitting for the quote of the episode, because what you're really, the root of what I've heard you talk about is how you are a cog within a greater community. The value lies within you, and you have the right to control what that value is, where that value goes, and how it's used. Whereas in a larger extension of where I feel AI currently is you are being consumed.
Yes, you're again a consumer.
And that's what ends up happening. And so the quote of the episode today is: community is much more than belonging to something. It's about doing something together that makes belonging matter. And I'm going to repeat that because it's a bit of a mouthful. Community is much more than belonging to something. It's about doing something together that makes belonging matter. And at the end and at the core of it all, for me, when I hear your story, Rob, I hear when you started off being the creator of chatbots in 1997, when you looked at the community in an e-commerce space and you saw traffic coming in and out, and the internet is essentially a vending machine. And you're like, well, this doesn't make sense. I mean, we've got people here, everyone's gathered. Let us connect. Let us have an opportunity to engage. And with that engagement allowed for a more full, a more enriching and more valuable experience for the end user and also probably for the business. And so that's where that sort of, that the whole business sort of flourished and stemmed from. And though you were absolutely broke, 27-year-old, hired people who essentially probably mentioned, who started undermining you, there was a level of a fractious nature to it all. You build skills, build tools that allowed you to appreciate how to better build that community, how to better build communities in the next space or even within that space that you're in. And I love the concept of, you said the wall, 3 walls, the macro wall, where essentially all the macro obstacles, where essentially it's the world that you're on. 9/11 came in, it impacted, and everything around you changed, and you have no control over it. You essentially, the key around a space like that is not necessarily don't get caught up in it, but play behind. Don't necessarily try lead and try to second guess where this is going to go, but really just to walk behind it. Because at the end of it all, there are things that you can control, things that you can't control. And the beauty about life, in essence, is as much as we are part of a community, we can't control everything that's within the community. And the belonging part of life is the fact that you're not necessarily always in control. Then there's the second one, which is the operational events, where there's a cow in the ditch and all 3 people standing there criticizing, wondering, freaking out. And at the end of the day, people watching this cow with a billion things to say about the cow, but really watching it die. And sometimes within a community, we are surrounded by noise, clutter, all sorts of everything around us. And we forget the belonging that matters within that circumstance, within that situation. And at the end, in that example that you gave, it's what really matters is that cow needs to live. You need to get that cow out that goddamn ditch. And if you're just not focused on that, you are going to miss it completely. And you're going to miss the value that you can put forward onto the table. You're going to waste a lot of energy, to waste a lot of voice airtime. And that is another wall, an obstacle that is it's so simple, so basic, so in your face, but it's something that is so easy to miss. And I love it for sort of how you build that out. And then you talked about the people that want you to fail. Sometimes it might not be intentional. Sometimes it might be a bit intentional, but at the end of it all, it's you should not walk through life and not necessarily be wary that everything is going to run smoothly and everybody around you is going to just go for it, propel you through into the wilderness. And Really, though you're building a community and you belong within a space, within that space, you should also be wary that it's not all great actors or good actors intentionally or non-intentionally. And I love when you talk about sort of that vision. And you're like, there is no vision, there's no target, there's no. It is, you sort of build it as you fly. You grow and you develop the process, and fine, you could have a massive action plan and you could have the right people, but really we sometimes get bogged in this idea of really wanting to lay it all out in front of you, but sometimes that control doesn't exist a lot of the time. And it's the ability to adapt within a space, to be able to see what the space can give and what the space might be able to, where it might be able to take you into a space of belonging or a space of matter, really, where you're actually going to add value, where you're actually going to make that DAO. And the way you said it is always keep moving forward. And sometimes we will get stuck in planning, get stuck in the procrastination of wanting perfection. And as long as we keep moving, and we appreciate there is no plan and we need to adapt, and these are the things that make up a community. It's a messy but beautiful piece of art that we are able to contribute into, but necessarily we shouldn't be hell bent on trying to control and predict and overthink it. And as you said, you take the day you wake up, you just need to get shit done. You've got a task, you're trying to move the dial. And for me, this conversation has been about executing within community to bring value. Because as long as we're able to identify where we're trying to get to or the value we're trying to realize. Now use the kit company as an example. The value is to provide a safe platform or AI tool for kids within an age range. And you've got that idea, and you talk about how the COPA certification is essentially been the bedrock of how you've built the whole business. And you knew and appreciated what you wanted to bring into life, what you wanted to bring into this society, because you've got your 9, 7, and 4-year-old children that you want them to have a better, more a creative experience that is outside of those influences and that potentially toxic world. And you want to be able to give that opportunity to a wider range of people, providing more value to a greater community and a greater cause. And so I really admire the work that you're doing. I really admire the insights that you provided us through this all. And obviously, you didn't do it alone. You had different people, and you mentioned, Peter Block, about building a culture of connection and all wise Buddha, as you almost said. But at the end of it all, it's creating better community with the highest level of standards towards not necessarily getting caught up with the idea that Peter Thiel's in the room, but rather it's what value is being added within this space, within what you're doing, within your actions, within everything that you do. And I love when you talked about sort of that filtering for scale, some of the skills that you learned, filtering for scale. So you look at your business now and, you really pick up how you're able to scale what you're working on, but even to scale the business. And then the 2-week rule, because sometimes we just give people way too much time, way too much. Oh, he's going to improve, he's going to be better. But really, at the end, we corrode the community within the business that we're building. And at times, though it might be a difficult decision, it is something that is needed to be done for a greater reason, a greater cause. You said it's corny and cheesy, but you're only as good as your weakest link within a company. And it's important for you to manage the energy within your company and the belief in God. And though, you could have fooled me. I think that you've got really a strong sense of, your faith, really. But I will take it in that regardless of whether faith or whether not necessarily having a faith, it's that essence of a humility of something greater than you, that you're not the thing. You're not and as long as you have a belief on something better, greater, something that is going to guide you through this process, then ego doesn't lead. You have to lead with a level of humility, a level of adaptability, knowing that you shouldn't panic. You shouldn't try to be overly controlling. It is a process that you're part of a larger community, that at the end of the day, we belong to something, but we want to make that belonging matter and meaningful. And that is what I've really picked up from this conversation. I've really valued and treasured every single thing. And you know what? I am 1 hour smarter than I was earlier, because a lot of the things that you did share was so insightful and refreshing, because real life examples, really, you can't take that away from anybody. So I'd like to thank you, and I really appreciate you being on the podcast.
Yeah, no, I appreciate being here too. And by the way, it was a great summary. ChatGPT summarizing our conversation. Motion and so like you captured everything, and like that's, if you don't watch anything of this, you get the last 5 minutes, you're going to capture everything you need. It's just good to get the word out, and I appreciate all you're doing. People just need to know, if they're going to go out in the world and try to live a dream, that the reality is that it's up, it's down, but if you can just keep moving, keep it calm, stay focused on your tasks for the day, the rest of it works out. Whatever's up there will take care of you one way or another. Whether you like it or not, whatever's your future destiny, may be already kind of chosen for you. And you're an actor in a play. So you just got best acting. You know what I'm saying?
Now, Rob, I really appreciate you taking the time, and it's been absolutely amazing. And thank you yet again.
Okay, same here.
Yeah.
This podcast is brought to you by Transformation Leader. You can follow us at www.t4leader.com.